Hello everyone, my name is Achila Yona and welcome back to my YouTube channel. And if you are new here, then just welcome. I am happy to have you join us for today. We are talking about mound builders and mound building culture. Not a lot of people are aware of this fascinating yet sacred practice many indigenous tribes created and used. Mound builders were prehistoric American Indians whose practice of burying their dead in huge mounds earned them the term. They erected huge earthworks from the Great Lakes down to the Mississippi River Valley and into the Gulf of Mexico region beginning around 3,000 years ago. Hundreds of intact sites remain and welcome tourists, many with signage, trails, or even neighboring museums, despite the fact that a large majority has vanished, or should I say, have been destroyed. Some eroded, robbed, or demolished, or plowed under for farmland, and others exist only on private property. These mounds, many of which are still standing today, were made of hundreds of tons of earth, clay, and stone, and were constructed on a vast scale despite the fact that the builders lacked horses and did not use the wheel. The mound builders were not a singular tribe, but rather a collection of diverse communities that constructed mounds as a customary means of honoring creation and the cosmos. Many of the multiple mound complexes, especially the older ones, use standard measures in mound placement to depict the recurring phases of the sun, moon, and Venus across the sky. Indigenous people called mounds navels, the many mountains where the first humans rose from their watery birth cave deep in the earth. Mound arrangements thus not only depict the tiered cosmos, but also precisely tally the days of cosmic cycles. They are North America's first calendar, centuries ahead of similar Mesoamerican almanacs. Mound form and use evolved over the 7 millennium history of mound building, but mound builders remained committed to the historic core beliefs until the last basket load of soil was compacted into place. One group of mound builders was the Adena people. The Adena were the first known group in modern United States to build earthen mounds in which to bury their dead on a regular basis. Animal or geometric designs were frequently engraved into the mounds. Around 400 BC, they emerged in the Ohio River Valley. They fished as well as hunted and gathered. They settled in villages scattered throughout a large area. The Grave Creek Mound in Moundsville, West Virginia, is the largest Adena mound, measuring 900 feet or 270 meters in a circle and 70 feet or 21 meters in height. Scholars believe that the technique of mound building spread when the Adena traded with other American Indian tribes. The Hopewell and Mississippian peoples were also mound builders. The Hopewell were hunters and gatherers who grew corn and squash as well. They eventually settled in the Midwest, where their burial mounds can still be observed. The largest is near Newark, Ohio. Objects recovered in the Hopewell earthworks, like shells, shark teeth, and volcanic glass, show that they traded with distant cultures. Around the year 500, this trade network crumbled and the Hopewell died out. The only mound builders who had contact with Europeans were the Mississippians, who settled in the Mississippi Valley in what is now the southern United States. Their era began around 700 AD and lasted into the 1700s. Mississippians were farmers who raised livestock. They created cities that were among the first in North America. In addition to their mounds, the largest of which may be discovered in Cahokia, Illinois. The Mississippians traded with Mexican Indians, such as Aztec and Mayans, and were inspired by them, as several of their earthworks included temples atop the mounds. Fun fact, the creeks in the Mayans are the only indigenous peoples to build five-sided pyramids. The Poverty Point, Adena, Hopewell, and Mississippian cultures left behind four distinct types of mounds. Effigies, mounds fashioned like snakes, birds, or bears, were built along the Great Lakes and in the states of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Iowa. Cone shaped mounds were built along the Ohio River Valley. Pyramids with flat tops were erected in the lower Mississippi Valley. Earthen walls, occasionally reinforced with stone, were constructed in the central Midwest. Poverty Point, a remarkable landmark that predates both Confucius and Christ, is located in Louisiana. The city ruins in North Louisiana are so old that they can be considered as old, if not older than, some of Egypt's pyramids. Poverty Point in northern Louisiana's West Carroll Parish is thought to be over 3,400 years old. Poverty Point, on the other hand, has portions that date back to 4,000 BC, making it as old as some of Egypt's pyramids and even older. The awe inspiring mounds at Poverty Point in North Louisiana were being created at the same time as Stonehenge was being built across the pond, and pyramids were still being built in Egypt. Between the years 2589 and 2504 BC, Egyptians constructed the Giza pyramids. According to archaeologists, the majority of the earthworks at Poverty Point date back to roughly 1600 and 1000 BC. But some scientists believe the mounds may be older. The Lower Jackson Mound at Poverty Point was once thought to be the same age as the other mounds discovered there, but modern carbon dating has revealed that it was created about 3900 to 3600 BC, predating the Poverty Point earthworks by roughly 1,500 years. Poverty Point was an important trading city along a trading trail that stretched hundreds of miles across what is now the United States. Stones from as far distant as thousands miles away were traded for arrowheads as well as variety of figurines, clay pots, spears, tools, hearth ovens, and other artifacts have been discovered by site curators. The man-made mounds and circular patterns that form around them are the most prominent characteristic of this ancient metropolis. The tallest mound on the site stands at 72 feet. The Mound A was built fast, in 1 to 3 months, according to soil tests, which is remarkable given that it was the largest construction in North America for 2,000 years. The remarkable and sophisticated talents of this civilization may be seen in the objects recovered across this enormous site. Artifacts unearthed at the site prove there was a trading culture, which adds to their high abilities. Poverty Point may not be Egypt, but it does carry weight to its name. From 100 BC to 200 AD, the Middle Woodland period was the first period in Mississippi when mounds were frequently constructed. Hunters and gatherers, the Middle Woodland peoples lived in semi permanent or permanent villages. The majority of the Mississippian mounds are rectangular, flat topped earthen platforms on which chiefs built temples or homes. These structures had thatched roofs and were made of wooden posts plastered with mud. Platform mounds of the Mississippian period varied in height from 8 to nearly 60 feet and in width from 60 to 770 feet at the base. During this time, certain mounds were constructed to bury notable members of local tribal communities. These burial mounds were rounded, dome shaped structures with diameters ranging from 50 to 100 feet and heights ranging from 3 to 18 feet. Occasionally, distinctive artifacts acquired through long distance trade were buried among those buried in the mounds. After the Middle Woodland period, burial mound construction decreased, and only a few were created during the Late Woodland period, circa 400 to 1000 AD. Boyd, Banam, and Far sites, as well as Tuwala Lake and Holly Springs National Forest, have woodland burial mounds. Because the Tuwala Mound is not on the National Register of Historic Places, it is not included in this itinerary. Winterville, Jaketown, Pocahontas, Emerald, Grand Village, Owl Creek, and Bear Creek sites all have Mississippian period mounds. Between 800 and 1540 BC, the Mississippian period lasted. Because it began in the middle Mississippi River Valley between St. Louis and Vicksburg, it is known as Mississippian. However, when the culture extended over the current United States, there were other Mississippians. Missouri sites of social and political authority throughout the Mississippian period are marked by mounds. They represent evidence of a more complicated manner of life than that of woodland in previous times. Regional Mississippian populations were often structured into chiefdoms, territorial units of hereditary aristocratic leadership classes in contrast to the comparatively basic egalitarian tribal organization of other woodland societies. The chiefdom system of political structure emerged in the Southeast as a means of managing increased social complexity brought on by steady population expansion. Agriculture like corn, beans, and squash supported this population increase, which was revolutionary new way of sustenance that became an economic basis during the Mississippian period. Cahokia was a Mesoamerican city that, at its peak from 1050 to 1200 AD, was larger than many European cities, including London. The city was spread out over 6 square miles and encompassed at least 120 mounds and a population between 10,000 and 20,000 people. The tallest mound on the Cahokia site is Monk's Mound, which stands at 290 meters. By the 13th century, Cahokia had begun to decline and was suddenly abandoned by 1300 to 1350 AD. When the first Europeans arrived in the 1500s, mound construction was once again on a decline. Early European explorers introduced pandemic diseases that killed local populations across the southeast, creating several cultural disruptions. As a result, by the time regular contact with European colonists began around 1700 AD, the lengthy history of mound construction had practically ended. There is no doubt in my mind whatsoever that the mound building period would have continued if European influence didn't come into play, but only the Great Spirit knows. There's a lot to American history that you don't know about. There are mounds all around us, and many people don't know it because they are not familiar with Indigenous American practices and culture. Next time you're driving and passing by a big hill, it could possibly just be an Indian mound. My name is Sheila Yona, and that concludes today's video. Subscribe to my channel for more information on mound builders and indigenous culture. Don't forget to hit the bell button to get notified when I upload a new video because you don't want to miss it. Thank you for watching, and until the next time, bye!